I'm going to cover three building patterns that right now really does work for most of the things I'm doing and internal projects are doing that I'm on or have been a part of. And if you follow these patterns, I think you'll solve a lot of your core needs as a business or as a team. It will give you the conventions you need to work together to support these products. It has the right amount of AI right now because AI just keeps getting better. So I should put a date on this because it's going to change. But right now, this is the good balance I have for building any internal application or external. What I mean by internal is many times an office or a business needs something that they're only going to use, and this is a great way to build it. And then external is obviously like a website or product or idea. So we'll go through each one of these in detail and I'll show examples. What I want to just do is do a quick overview. So in this case, we're going to look at front end work. Like, how do we think of front end when so not everything needs front end. I have an opt-out email system that's all back end, nothing gets done in the front. We do some reporting in Supabase, but we never needed to build a UI for it. N8N deals with all the emails, it deals with all the processing, and that's it. Supabase is obviously storing state and stuff, and we'll cover that. But in this case, we're going to think about front end, and I'll show you a site I'm building. It follows these patterns, and like the other 20, 30, 40, like whatever the number is, it's just crazy. So I just see it over and over again. So in this case, I was using Cursor, but now I'm back to Bolt because it's just doing it. And if I get out of the way and let it do its thing for the most part, it does its thing and it does well. Now, how far do I let it go? That's why I'm showing you these guardrails, and we'll go over each one. And these guardrails are key because right now AI is not perfect and it complicates things. So I want to make these simple patterns for it to follow. And a lot of that's going to rest on Supabase. Supabase, you can self-host or host. It's $10 a month if they're hosting it for you and free to an extent. So either way, it's a good foundation because it gives you authentication in WebSockets, in storage. So it's hard to beat. And I don't know if there's any reason to beat it. Its license is good. Its open source hosting is easy with Coolify. So I'm going to focus on that. That's the thing too. There's so many ways to do this stuff. By doing this, we're defining the pattern so we can focus on what we're building. I did this for years with Laravel, but I'm realizing that as I move away from it, like this is what I need, that consistency in those patterns to build a framework. So I'll touch on Supabase in how it works with the front end and how we keep the logic there and how we keep those working together in a very simple way. And finally, I'll show how I use N8N or active pieces to work with Supabase to do the complex work. You can tell AI to go make thumbnails or do something complex, honestly, but the chances of having Bolt or Lovable or Cursor do it really well and really solid and really consistency, and then your ability to support it as time goes on is hard. So I keep the complexity in the backend, in N8N, outside of there. And so what that means is that I can support it more easily. Any of us can jump in and fix things and see how past execution went, quickly see if and debug a problem. So it's hard to beat. And I'll talk about later the license but also like this N8N has been around for 5 years. And what really sets it apart for me right now, other than me just finally catching on, is that the AI aspects, like the fact that I can get in there and add AI when I need to so easily, change it to different models, even including my own private servers. It's hard to beat these things. So you'll see that there's no code here. Like I have 4 or 5 applications in and I haven't looked at code, just no need. And whatever, like as long as what I'm building is solid and secure, and none of these things are perfect, but easily to troubleshoot, easy to build upon and iterate. That's what's key. Nothing's perfect, whether you used all code or not. So I'll just cover how to iterate and how to do this stuff in a way that's secure and supportable. So let's dig into each one. Let's see how we can do this. So what I'm going to show first is a project I just did, but I could show you so many projects and they're all the same. Authentication, who has the rights to read or write to what happens in the UI after they read or write to the database. It's the same kind of patterns. What happens if they upload a file? It's a lot of the same things. So we're going to look at Bolt because that's where I'm at right now, and we're going to just talk about how it defaults to Vite. I tried to use Next with it, and it didn't like integrating with Supabase at that point. I'm like, listen, I'm going to let you do what you want as long as you follow some of these basic rules I'm going to talk about. And then Supabase auth. So I'm already hooked up to Supabase, and then I get it to use the auth. And we pretty much have a sign-in, login registration system in just one prompt. With that said, prompting it is a skill. Prompting it is using its prompt AI or ChatGPT or something to just not give it too much at once. It's a funny balance. Just go for it. But remember, sometimes a little bit of a step at a time is better. So let's see. I also keep it on guardrails of, hey, your only job is to read or write to a row in a table. And when we build tables, when you build migrations for me, we need to focus on row level security, which takes a little bit of time for you to get a handle on and make sure it's doing a good job. And then when you do something like write or read to a row in a table, you listen to real-time events. Now, those are an awesome feature in Supabase, and I'll go over that in Supabase. But real-time events means we can listen to changes in the database. It's a WebSocket, so when they happen here in Supabase, they happen here in the UI. It's very important, and it's very awesome. I'll go over that there. And then, of course, row-level security, where you were just understanding who owns this row, what team owns this data. And then again, the UI does not talk to N8N directly. We're going to talk about that in a moment. If it ever needs to do that, let's talk, because it's very rare, because typically the API you're thinking is data, and that data is in Supabase, so just use the Supabase query tool to do that. Okay, let's dig into now some of the UI. Let's go look at both for a moment, and then I'll come back to the Supabase side of this. So let's do that. All right, so let's go look at the front end work. Now, the application does not matter. I'm going to show you something, but I don't want to get confused by the something. I actually have two things that I can show. This one does not have authentication. The other one does. Let me boot that one up for you. One moment. Okay, very bright, but this is the other one. So it's just a grant flow, but I want to show something here. So let's see if I can log in. I always forget these things. I have them in one password, but all right, I'll cut that to look like I got my password right the first time. So this project has all the parts to the puzzle, just like this project. And like I'm trying to say in this overall flow here is it uses Vite, which just is whatever. I don't even need to know that. I just let it do its thing. I choose the integrations of Supabase in my GitHub repo. I actually give it a branch to work on so I can deploy main. I have a video on that. And it uses Supabase auth. So none of this is me doing auth. As you saw, that was Supabase doing auth. It's not AI building auth every time. It uses the Supabase backend for authentication. As you can see in other projects I've built, this one here, when you sign in, you can use social sign-in, which is part of Supabase. That's a lot of code or a lot of things to do, but not with Supabase, because it makes it a lot easier. So you get a lot of that value out of this. Now, these are the things that are important, and when I build things, there's two things there to think about, so let's do one at a time. First, I want the user to know things are happening. So as they use the product, I want them to know, hey, you've uploaded something. So let's go look at the real site here, because sometimes when you're working in this window, you should pop it open so that you can see a little bit more, not even see more. So some things work that can't work in here because of the container. I don't know the exact reason, but so sometimes I'll work in the popped out mode, and then things will work that weren't working there. So in this case, I want you to see how this has a lot of these pieces all in one. So it lets me upload a file, right? And that's a creepy dog. Hold on. Let's do this one. So it lets me upload a file. It shows that it's processing. It returns me to a new URL when it's done or ready. It will then continue to process, and when that's done, it's waiting for these, what are they called? Web sockets. So in the back here, all this time are sockets that then are listening to. So I'll reload this on the next one, and we'll watch it come together. And let's see here. Let's see if I have to reload this one. One moment. Let's try that again on my staging URL. So see these web sockets? They're proof to me as the developer or builder that I'm connected. I'm getting information from Supabase. My UI is aware of things. Now, if I upload a file, so let's do that guy again, okay? This particular communication path is open, and it's not so much a polling where I keep asking it for information, which is overwhelming, but it's me listening, this code listening. And Bolt knows how to do this to that Supabase table changes. So in Supabase, we have pet transformations, which is real time on, which then has a channel that is talking, just like imagine like a Slack channel that's talking to the UI saying, yeah, here we go. Things are changing, things are changing. And finally, when it gets a response saying, let's see where it is, if I could find it. Because I told the Supabase Bolt, said, hey, when you get a response saying, that the record, here's the old record, here's the new record. When you get a response saying status processing, let's show processing. When you get a response saying status done or status complete, let's show it as complete. So we went from uploading to triggering N8N. We'll talk about that after. But to the UI just listening for all of these events, which are triggered just by me writing to the Supabase tables. So the UI is just very focused on the UI and talking to Supabase and listening to Supabase. So you just have a very tight focus here in a simple guardrails for this guy, right? So your prompting just helps guide it. So you're like, hey, you're using Supabase for auth. Don't do anything outside the norm. Talk to the database, talk to the tables, use the library. Listen for real-time events. You might have to turn those on. It usually does it for you, but sometimes if you're having trouble with real-time events, just log into your Supabase and turn it on. It should do it in a migration, but sometimes it forgets. Depend on real row-level security. Yeah, don't compromise here. Take your time. These policies potentially, or should, make it so only I, the user, can see certain data. And sometimes I'll just go into chat here, and this is another place I'll hit in the next slide, where I talk to the AI that comes with Supabase because it's very knowledgeable. I won't do changes here. I'll come back to Bolt and give it the prompt to do the changes. But I want to, this AI is just great. It's here, use it. So that, let's see if we've missed anything. That is the gist of how I guide the front end. I rarely ever mention to it in Bolt that I'm using N8N. I just say, hey, I'll do some stuff in the back end. You just listen to events with real-time events in Supabase. So those are the guardrails I keep it on to build quickly, succinctly, consistently, whatever you want to say. And that's your framework. That's the start of a framework, okay? So now let's look at the next slide. All right, so this is about Supabase. And sorry about the duplicate or overlap there of goals. So again, we are putting a lot of our business logic, a lot of our application logic, we're getting a lot out of Supabase for this. We're going to use its row level security to manage access to rows and data. So say you had a product that you had internally for your company, row level security might mean a different thing because you're not so worried about Bob seeing what Jane is doing or whatever. But if you had a product externally, like one of the ones I'll show you in a moment, then it's important that no one sees my record, right? So get to know row level security and don't skimp on it. Just take your time. Bolt is pretty good at it, but the AI in Supabase is so good at it that then you paste its recommendations to Bolt. And then, like I showed a moment ago, real-time events, use them. They just really do a good job, and their docs have a lot of that. Take a moment to read about these docs. And the thing is, everything keeps changing, and it's only getting easier and easier. But you still need to know a little bit or something about these things so you can help AI when it goes off track. So you can know what you're doing and what should be. It doesn't mean you have to dig into the code. It just means you're guiding it along the way. And then Supabase integrations to N8N. So then when people do write a row in the database, so here's our pet painting one, right? When someone writes a row and requests this, it writes a row in the table. The Bolt knows how to do that. But then what happens here in integrations, I added database webhooks. You have to add them by going here. What I do here, though, is say, okay, if someone inserts a new pet transformation, go hit my N8N. And then one of these N8Ns, which I typically name according to the N8N workflow. So it would be this one. So this guy gets triggered, and I'll go into this in detail, but see, like, all the logic is here. And the moment N8N says, hey, this is running, or this is done, or this is doing the next thing, is the moment the UI gets the update from Supabase, okay? So we basically are talking to the UI by triggering changes in the Supabase row. So I typically have a pattern here where I will have, let's see, let's just open this up. Let's just look at a row where I will have a thing called, where is that? Status. So if I say status complete or failed or running or pending, the UI can update and then show that status. I usually even have sometimes a step so I can know, or say to more plain language, what's going on. So those are little things you can change along the way to let the UI know something has changed. And then I think along here you'll see too, and this is public, but it doesn't need to be. This project doesn't matter because it can be public. But if this was a project out in the public, this bucket would not be public. It would just be, what's the word? It would have row level security. And so therefore, Bolt would handle writing to it using the person's row level security who's authenticated. And then N8N would do some of the work after based on N8N's supervisor key, so it can do anything it wants. And so in this case, when someone, let's go back to N8N, when someone creates a painting, N8N gets a notice and it will go get the file, do stuff with the file, and then write back. And I'll go into this in a moment. So we can see how storage becomes a big win here. And I say not S3 because why S3? Stop complicating things. The storage is built into Supabase. It's really good. It integrates so well that it can, S3, there's nothing special about it. Just, it's here, use it. It's so good. And then use Supabase's AI. Like I said, if I get stuck and Bolt is stuck, or I want to make sure things are okay, I can just open this up and start asking information about my tables or my policies and make sure they're good. And that's very helpful, even to the point where I can have it recommend schemas and I can bring that over to Bolt. I don't want to do the changes here because in the end, Bolt will do a bunch of code. Let's see if I can find that for you. Let's see. This one. So in here we have Supabase's migrations, which represent all the things I changed. So I want Bolt to do it. I want it in code. So when I go to production, I can deploy those. And let's see, one other thing I just noticed, functions. This one has some functions. I don't do a lot with functions yet, just because I don't need to. But when I use Stripe, it's just out of the box, works with Stripe. So I'm like, this is great. And that's what Bolt did by default. So I let it do its thing, even though I have another way to do Stripe with N8N. But yeah, those are the functions it creates. And again, those can be migrated from system to system. So that's the gist of like Supabase's role, how it fills and connects the two systems, in how you can use it to just build these nice systems. The fact it does authentication in WebSockets and file storage, that's huge. I can't tell you how much I used to work on things with other like Laravel or Ruby on Rails and how much that, even though it was pretty boilerplate, it was still a lot of boilerplate, a lot of things that didn't work the way I wanted them to, or it just introduced a lot of opinions and stuff. I just feel like this has been really nice to work with. All right, now let's go look at the layer after this, the back end, the proper back end. This is like the middle end. Let's go look at the back end. All right, so the last part of this, actually there's deployments. We'll talk about that too. But the last part to this build is going to be the backend, the N8N or active pieces. Now I put active pieces in there because it can do a lot of what N8N does. But it's tricky. I'm so used to N8N that I'm going to focus on that. So in this case, the biggest glue point between Supabase and N8N is what we call these integrations. So let's go look at that. So the moment someone writes or updates a row in N8 Supabase is the moment the Supabase webhook integration does something. So it says, hey, I'm going to, on insert, notify you here. And then if we go look at that guy, let's go find it on create. We have a history, okay? If we just debug in the editor for a moment, we see that we get the record. It's an insert, and then we get the record, and that's it. We would get the old record too if it was an update, which is very helpful. I don't know. I'll show you in this one after where I use it for updates. We'll look right now. So then on update, we hit the pet painting upscale. So this means the person basically wanted an upscale. They paid for it. So if we go look at that one, let's go back. And if we look at that one, we then see, okay, let's get a pass execution. And you see it stops because these are updates that I didn't really care about. So basically I'm saying, hey, on an update, we have a pet transformation that maybe had an updated update date or had an updated status or had an updated something. But this particular step only cares if it's updated true, paid true, sorry, and that the status has changed from the old record. So it's a nice way to deal with updates, but then make that workflow only deal with the update you care about. And I will cover that. Let's find one that really, let's find one that did the whole thing. And I thought, no, I haven't done it in a while. I was doing some QA yesterday, so let's see if there's one with a purchase. And if not, we'll do it right now. Let's just do that. So we'll go to this one. This is my staging area. Close that. I'll go purchase. But because it's hooked up to test stripe, we don't really need to pay for it. So now it's generating. So if we go back to the N8N, let's leave this over here. And we'll go back to the N8N, so that would be here. And we'll scroll way up and you'll see, yep, this is the one. So one of these is the long one. Here it is. So this is the one we just did. So that one passed the if statement because it is paid true, but the old record was paid false. So then the system said, okay, I'm going to go update this to generating. So the UI can be like, hey, it's generating. I'm going to show what matters there. And then it goes through the process of doing the hard work of going to the API with Pixelbin, saving some of that state to Supabase. This guy then goes back to Pixelbin and says, go generate or get me the high res version. Takes the high res version and loads it back into Supabase. So we save it into the storage system and then finally updates the record to be like, hey, status complete. So then the UI knows that it can show this high res image. And then the person can download the high res image because again, Bolt was told, hey, this is going to happen. And when it says generating, show generating, when it says complete and has a high res image URL, then let them download it. So it's a very structured way to push Bolt through into getting me to a point where the paid area is ready for the person to download. And the UI knows this. The UI in the code probably is looking for things, and I can't remember because I haven't looked. It just worked, especially after telling Bolt what to do and going through it a few times. Nothing big, just detail work though. Let's see if we can find the latest one. It would be this guy. So we can see here it says complete, paid is true, and then the upscaled URL exists, so therefore N8N knows, sorry, the Bolt knows I'm going to show this, it's paid, there's a URL, they can download it. So it puts all that together to know what to show in the UI. And so, yeah, we see all these pieces come together at this moment. So we have Supabase integration with webhooks, integrations. We have the business logic over there to do all that work, including payments. The way Bolt did Stripe is unrelated to this, and I don't want to go into that right now, but it's very simple, and we can talk about that some other time, but it's very simple, and it did it all by just clicking that integration. All I had to do was deal with the results of that, where when it got paid, I then reacted to it. So it's very simple then. It's a reaction. Some people would call it event-driven. I think it's event-driven, but I don't want to focus on those type of terminologies and get caught up in that. But it's really a sense of separating responsibilities here from what's to do what and how the other thing works and gets triggered. Again, in N8N, I didn't need any AI here, but there was, let's see, was there AI in that first part? Let's go look really quick. Hold on. Create. No AI at all. So just, I don't need it here, right? This is a very straightforward process, and I could use AI to decide which type of image to generate or whatever. But in this case, I'm basically saying to the person, we're generating one type of image, we're going to do it. In the grant flow one, this guy, I will do more with AI. So let's go look at that really quick. So we'll go search for grant, because I usually categorize everything, try to. And so when the file is uploaded, there's no AI there, but then I probably listen to things, right? So, hey, we've gotten a webhook. That webhook is an update, project files. And again, we react to it. We decide if we want to listen to this one or react to this one. And then we update the database as needed to make sure things are moving along and let the UI know. In this case, we get all the particular pages which were broken out in a previous one. So we took the file and OCR'd it. And then we let AI do its thing where it's, okay, my job is to do something. What is my prompt? And that prompt basically in this case is to make a bunch of tasks and to break it into pieces, into whatever, so that the user can go really quickly from a dashboard to a project to a file upload to a bunch of tasks related to, let me see if I can find it, to that particular file. So now they can have attain a letter of support. So when they go here, they could start writing the reply, have AI help them with it, and so forth. There's a lot of work to be done here, but that's the gist of it. And it's all the same flow where it's everything I'm talking about. So we also see a lot of moments where we use if statements and switch statements and loops. So we can easily do a lot there. And a lot of that is normal coding stuff or logic stuff that businesses need. So you can see you're just as powerful as any developer at this point, in my opinion. We can easily switch to private LLMs. So right here, I could say, you know what, I don't want to use Gemini because this is very private data. I'm going to point this to, oops, sorry, not that one. I'm going to point this to Ollama, and we will use our Ollama account, which might not be hooked up right now. Let me see. So if it was hooked up, you would then see the models that I have on that machine. And then they could just use Ollama. And I don't believe people when they say it's not as good as these. I think they have their place, and I think it depends on the task, and I think it depends on your prompt. So if you choose the right models for Ollama and you build up the right prompts and you use them in the right places, then I think you're going to do well. You have vision, so you can take PDFs, turn them into PNGs, and give them to the model to like review and tell you what's on that page. It goes further than OCR because it might have graphs that are not going to be OCR'd. You have tools. These are just models that are smart enough to use tools. But you could use a model that's smart enough to use tools. And then one of the tools it uses is an external workflow that has vision. The combinations are endless. So no, there's no reason not to use it. I just enjoy the speed and ease of this. This one I have to host my own systems, and that's fine. I'm moving in that direction. So that's a big deal there is I can switch LLMs, which means, hey, Google just released a new model. I want to use it. Or next week, Claude just released a new model. I want to use it. And we get to this point that you just can't experience anywhere else where I can say, you know what, I don't want to use Gemini today. I want to use Mistral, or I want to use Anthropic, or I want to use something different that just came out. Then two other things here is when I do want the UI to react and show the status update, I will use N8N nodes. So let's see here. So here I write completed, and I write completed with a step or processing message. I'm using a Supabase node for that, and not that's the only way, but that will trigger because the writing to that triggers. Now, it should still work otherwise, but I tend to use that. Now, what I mean by otherwise, if I used a Postgres, because remember, this is just Postgres, and if I need to execute a query, I tend to sometimes pull out Postgres when the query is just more complex than what I can get. But I don't tend to use Postgres for writing because I rather use the Supabase node for that. I don't know if that's 100% true, but what I do know is that these tables, let's see if this one has these functions that get triggered to then trigger the particular related N8N. So these are built into or part of the extensions included with Postgres. So honestly, I would bet I don't need to read and write with Supabase in that, but just to keep things consistent and simple, I read and write I write an update when it comes to Supabase when I really want the UI to get the updates, right? So that goes back to the WebSockets. That goes back to real-time events. All right, so now we see how the role that N8N will play. Now let's go look at how we deploy these things. And then that will be, I think, a wrap on this. All right, last part, but I'm gonna go into depth in a class I'm gonna have, a 1 session. The session will be under 2 hours because we can do this all and really get you into it. And it will be a session where you can ask questions. So it'll be live. So I'll share a link to that at the end of this video in the description. This is just about deploying. So, if you're working internally or on a small project, you have options. With Bolt or any of these, they have a deploy button, so you could really just get going pretty easily. I don't want to click it. Hopefully it just will go to Netlify and go away. But it would end up on Netlify, which I don't want it to be because I already have this taken care of. And then Netlify would host it, and I would have to follow a few steps to just make it set up. What I typically do from here on is I just use Coolify. So you can go to their website and just use their hosting, sign up, and get going. You can do self-hosting as well, and either way it's going to be the same concept. So I then make a project, in this case pet watercolors, and then I have one called staging. So if we go to Bolt, and I am stuck here, I don't want to do that. I'll fork it and see what happens. Anyways, if you go to Bolt, you'll see that my repo is that staging, and the repo is here. So if I go there, just to get out of this for a moment, we can see that I have the code and we have staging, and staging has what it's writing to at all moments, right? So as we work, it writes to staging. So if we were to make a change, it would just keep writing here again and again on its own. I don't have to do anything. And then in Coolify, I said, hey, you know what? Take that staging build. So I just added a new project. I do this in another video, but I add a new project. I use my GitHub app. Again, other video shows this. I then put it on my local server, and then I choose the correct app, and then I just go get the project. And then from there, let's see, paint, pet. And then from there on staging, because that's what I'm calling it, I then said, okay, you know what? We're going to do the build pack as their default. And on the GitHub sources, it's my staging branch. And there's the repo. And then in the environment variables, I plug in the same things that are in Bolt. So in Bolt, I can just go to here and to here, and I can just copy those over to there, and I'm pretty much ready to go. So now what's going to happen is, because I use the GitHub app to set this up, is that every time it pushes code, it's just going to keep deploying and deploying. So I could go here at any moment to see the particular staging build. And that's why in the first part of this video, the non-build didn't work because I haven't deployed yet, because I wasn't ready. I'll do it right now. I think I just need to, I can do it right now. I have to change some credentials, but I don't need to do that right now. So in this case, I'm like, okay, this is looking great. I want to deploy the main branch. And so the main branch is just what I'm treating as the thing I deploy. So if I go back to pet watercolors and I go to production, it's the same thing, except that it is GitHub source main. And so at this point, nothing happens automatically there yet because I just don't want it to. But I go over to the repository. I can just click that. And then I would make a pull request. And I could have sworn I just did this. So let's see if it's still open. And I say, hey, let's put staging in the main, but there's no difference. I just deployed it recently. Okay. So if I saw a difference there, which I could do right now, but I think I've totally messed up my bolt. Let's see if I didn't totally mess up my bolt. Doop, doop, doop. Let's just do something simple. Let's see. All right, let's just give that a moment on staging. If this fork thing isn't totally messed me up, we'll find out. So we're on staging. That's the active branch. It's going to do its thing, which is just alter some code in a file. So we'll see that go to GitHub. Just give it a moment. And obviously we see it here, nice. And then if we go back to the repo, which I can always just click here. So we're going to go here. And then we're going to see that we just had a push, we just had a push, a commit now. And it's given me this green thing, so I could just make a pull request. I'm going to go to pull request and do it the way we just did it, new pull request, which is silly because it will always have a green thing, but sometimes, if just in case. So I'm saying, hey, put staging code in the main code, create the pull request, don't bother writing anything because who cares? And then let it just spin and be done. You could do other things here, but I don't need to. And then I'm going to merge. And so here I could run, or I'll show it in another video or in the training, that we can then trigger the Supabase migration. So we send all our changes to there, not our data, but our changes to our tables. But what's more important here is that if we go to projects and we go to production and we go to pet watercolors and we look at deployments, we should see one happening. And so basically by updating that branch with that code, we triggered Coolify to deploy for us. So give that a moment, and then when we go to, let's see, Pet Watercolor Studio, and I don't know why it says that, sorry, that's just a weird cache setting, because when I started off, it was not a good cert for no good reason, just a mess up on my part. So now we see it's a good cert, and we should see that in a moment when it's done. So let's put that here for a moment. It's still in progress. It's usually pretty quick. Let's see, one day goes. So usually we hit about 20 seconds to deploy. Why this is taking longer than 20, I don't know. It's not common. So just give it a moment. You can watch what it's doing if you want. It looks like it's done, or something happened. Okay, 2 minutes. I only see 2 minutes when it's a fresh install, or maybe because, I don't know, that's interesting. But anyways. So now if we go here and we reload, we'll see that. Now, if you ever go here and you reload, you don't see a change, it's very rare, but if you get into that situation where it's potentially cache, you just open up your developer tools and then you can do, let's see, I'm in Firefox, I'm not used to that. One moment. Let's see, one of these. One of these lets you do a hard refresh. And I'm in Firefox because I wanted to show you the cert is working, and that's why we had trouble before. But if you can do a hard refresh, so that you can hold shift and click it, or control. Let's see which one. I'd have to Google that, but my point is you can make sure it does all the cache. But in this case, we're okay because it did show up and the cache was irrelevant. It must have done something on its own. So yeah, that is it. We now have covered the idea of deploying Coolify. Supabase is not much harder. It's just like 3 commands in the GitHub action or in Coolify. I don't have it set up because typically right now I'm working in this project on just one database. But if I had dev and staging and production, I would just have those particular 3. So Supabase deploy functions, Supabase deploy migrations, and I don't know if it's another one is needed. It's like a seed or something. I will grab those and paste them below and emphasize them in the training and link to some videos. There's a bit of a difference if you're self-hosting versus hosted, and it's not impossible to go from Supabase paid hosting to self-hosting, but either way, those are just part of your build process. And then you get into the idea of a license with N8N. Deploying N8N right now, I copy paste a lot of the things over. So if I was building this grant site in a way that I'm ready to go to production, or it's production and have staging, I would just duplicate this guy and call it development or staging, whatever, just so you have one thing. And then I would continue to work on it knowing it's pointing to the staging database. It's pointing to the staging things, so that I could then change things but not mess up what's working. But you can pay for N8N's license, and I think it would be a lot easier. But right now I just don't need it. Whenever I make a change to something like this, it's usually not much, because either A, I'm building a new workflow or tool in its own workflow, or B, I'm just changing 1 or 2 nodes and just copy them over to production. So I haven't found much of a need for it. Very rarely does that bite me. So I would say very rarely does that get me, but basically I would say deploying N8N is more about taking that particular JSON over. I even use the same N8N for both systems, because then I just don't find the need for 2 different N8Ns. They're good if you really want to focus on making sure that no one makes a mistake, because then that one 8N doesn't really have any access or credentials to production. But there's a lot of ways to deploy N8N, and a lot of ways if you buy the license, obviously, and a lot of ways if you don't. I can cover them in more detail in that lesson as well, that training. But just from real life usage, it's not a big deal. Where it gets or feels clunky is less clunky than anything else I've ever done before. So it's totally hasn't been a big strain for me to push any further on it. All right, so I think that covers everything here. So if we go back to the main slide, I cost, self-hosting. Yeah, I cover these. Okay. But if we go back to the main slide, we see that we now have covered the big picture here of how to build, how to minimize what the front end and the AI needs to do, how to use consistently all the tools that Supabase gives us to build more quickly, and then how to move the logic out to N8N or active pieces, out to N8N or active pieces, out to no code frameworks. Because you really don't want to be coding. If you're developers, if you're a developer, if you're a team, if you're a business owner, and people are writing code, you're wasting a lot of time. They can never be as fast as this, as efficient. They can never be as long-term supportable. Just none of it adds up to you as a win. So any no-code foundation, like even Zapier or Make, where you're paying maybe more, you're paying less than a developer. So get yourself into that. So that really emphasizes the no-code aspects. So this pattern here will build a lot of what you need, and it will create a foundation for any team or company to start building consistently. All right, there is a link below for a training. There's a link below for Substack. There's a link below for us work. So just if you want to be a part of these things and help support me, they're below. And I'll have other stuff down there, like links to the great video someone made on how to migrate Supabase and all that. It really it's just great. Go watch it. A lot of this stuff, watch videos, take your time, learn, and then go do it, and then rinse and repeat. All right, thank you.